Ellie left, right? Yeah. She left. I was going to thank her because she did an excellent job leading worship, as she always does. But we had some last-minute call-outs as far as our leadership team was concerned, and Matt was one of those. He wasn't feeling well, so he wasn't here this morning, obviously. And she stepped in like last minute and rushed down here, and it was really cool to have her do that. Anyhow, we are continuing our new series called Against the Current. Okay? If you were not here last week, I'll bring you up to speed. We just started last week, and what we're looking at is some of the hot topics of the day. And last week, what we started with was a worldview. We just started with a worldview. A worldview is how you and I view the world. And each of us has a different view of things. No doubt you've been talking with somebody, a friend or a family member. You're both looking at the same thing, but you're seeing two different things. It's like, well, no, that's not what I see. And, well, this is how I see it. Well, this is how I see it. Well, with that in mind, applying your view of the world. And by the world, we mean things that are going on in the world. War, Afghanistan, just all the different topics. How do you view it? And then why do you view it that way? And what we learned last week is that because we're Christians, we have a biblical worldview. A biblical worldview. Meaning, where do we get our worldview from? We don't get it from Instagram, is what we don't do. What we do is we get it from the Bible. We always go back and we check the Bible and say, well, what does the Bible have to say about it? We found out last week that the Bible would be like a ruler for you and I. A ruler, there's got to be a standard for every ruler, or tape measure, or just the system of measurement. There's got to be a basis, a standard that everybody that picks up a ruler, you go to the store and you buy yourself a ruler. It's got to be the same one that the same measurement that you have at home. Or if you get one from your teacher, or you find one on the street, they've all got to be the same amount. There's a standard. Well, we found out for you and I as Christians, our standard is the Bible. That's what we go to. Without a standard, everybody does their own thing. Remember your mom on the way to church, driving on the opposite side of the road because she really has always dreamed of living in London or Manchester or something. Remember that? Well, we have a standard here of driving on the right side of the road. That's what we do. There are lines out there that tell us, not to cross a certain way, certain ways. Street lights, we talked about that there's a standard. Green means stop. Go. Yellow means punch the gas, man, it's about to change. Red means slam on the brakes before you hit somebody. So we've got standards. And for you and I as Christians, our standard is the Bible. And what we're doing is we're looking at certain topics, things that are going on right now in society. We're looking at the current, which way is the current going? And as Christians, are we going along with that current? Texas. We know lots of things about Texas. What's going on in Texas right now is that there's a huge debate. There's been a huge debate. Texas seems to always be stirring something up. But earlier this year, they signed a new law. They came up with a new law banning abortions after 6 weeks. So once it's been 6 weeks, abortions are outlawed. You're not allowed to have an abortion. In Mexico, just recently, they adopted a law allowing abortions. Up until now, it was against the law. So abortion is one of those hot topics. It's in the news. People are talking about it. And what do I believe? And what do you believe? And who's right and who's wrong? Because we can't all be right. We've all got different ideas about this topic, so we can't possibly all be right. So who's right? Well, what we do is, in this instance, we always want to go back to the Bible and see, what does the Bible say? Between 2015 and 2019, okay, so a few years ago, between 2015 and 2019, roughly 120 million unintended pregnancies occurred. We're talking worldwide numbers here, okay? Between 2015 and 2019, this was a few years ago, But between those years, every year, 121 million around the globe, unintended pregnancies occurred. Now, that does not mean that all of them ended in abortion. It means that 121 million times, roughly speaking, ladies were pregnant and said, I was not intending this, I wasn't planning this, okay? Of those pregnancies, of the 121 million, and by the way, it says roughly 120 million. Why does it say roughly? Because you can imagine around the world, people are not reporting everything they do. So in this instance, people around the world do not always report when they've had an abortion. So it's roughly, okay? But of those unintended pregnancies, 121 million of them, it's estimated that 61%, well over half, ended in abortion. That would mean about 73 million abortions per year took place between 2015 and 2019. 73 million. 73 million. Now, just to help put this into perspective, 73 million. Is there anyone in here who expects in their lifetime to ever see 73 million of anything? 73 million. Do you expect in your lifetime to ever see $73 million? Some estimates on the low end of these numbers say it's not 73 million. It's only 40 million. So let's drop it to 40 million. Is there anybody in here that expects within their lifetime to ever see $40 million other than on TV?
I'm way too poor.
In a movie. What's that?
I'm way too poor.
Way too poor for that.
Yeah,
Okay? I'll tell you what. We are a humble group. We're from Menifee. Right?
Woo!
How about $1 million? Is there anybody in here in this room that expects to see $1 million? I might see it. Monopoly money or something like that, but
yeah.
$1 million is a lot. I'll tell you what. Since we're talking about abortions, let's say, you know what, man, it's not 73 million babies aborted. It's not even 40 million. Let's drop it way down. Let's say 100,000 children died this year, were aborted this year. 100,000. Seems like kind of a big deal, right? Let's drop it way down. Let's say 10,000. It's just 10,000. Just 10,000 babies were aborted. It's just 10,000. Drop in the bucket, it's just, look at the world's population. It's minute compared, right? Let's drop it down even further. Let's just say 1,000. Let's say 1,000 babies were aborted this year. It's like, well, it's not that bad, not a big, that's an acceptable number. What is the acceptable number? And what do we think about that? Well, what we do is, this is what we're learning, is we always want to go back to the Bible and say, well, the current, okay? They're estimating here, and it's estimates, they're estimating that 63% of the people that have had abortions are going in a certain direction. That's the current, okay? That's the current. So what do you and I do? Do we jump in and go along with the current? Or do we go in some opposite direction? Well, the way to determine what exactly we do is, we learned last week, is we always want to go to the Bible. So obviously we would do that this morning. Let's go to Genesis chapter 1. Some of you are familiar with that. Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, if you are taking notes, is right before Genesis chapter 2.
Wow.
Okay, I know. Genesis chapter 1 is the very first book in the Bible. Okay, in case you're not aware of that, we are glad to have you here and glad that you're here this morning. What's that? Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Boom. There it is. Okay, there it is. We're going to see three different things this morning. Forget that Colossians chapter 2, verses 1 through 8. Some really dumb guy left that from last week. It was me. Three things that we're going to learn this morning. Why are we pro-life? Okay? Let me tell you what we're not doing this morning. I'm not giving you a whole bunch of talking points to win an argument against somebody in your class that believes in abortion. Okay? That's not what I'm doing. What I'm doing is I'm giving you reasons why you and I are pro-life. If you're pro-life, this is why. This is why. Okay? These are some very, very basic points. Now, what we know is that the majority of us in here care. We care about this topic. This is a big topic. Huge topic. But what we also know is that the majority of us are not intending to or looking forward to or planning on discussing this topic with other people. We're just not those type of people. Some people love to debate. Anybody in here know someone that loves to debate? Okay? Yeah. We know people that love to debate, or they love to argue. Okay? What I'm not doing is giving you talking points to blast somebody out of the water and just make them feel like trash. It's not what I'm doing. If you're one of those people that says, you know what, I would like to find out more information about this topic, to be able to talk to people patiently, lovingly, I want to share some things with them and hopefully convince them, then afterward, if you stick around, I can point you in that direction. I can give you some resources to look, some places to find information, some good talking points, if you would like to lovingly, patiently discuss things with people. Okay? But here's what we find in Genesis chapter 1. You're there, right? We find that life originated with God. It says in verse 26, then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. So God created man in his own image. The image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Why are we pro-life? Why do we say no, abortion's bad and life is a good thing and babies ought to be born? Well, because, first of all, because we see that God created life. God created life. Life originated with him. Look at the first verse there, verse 26. Then God said, what did God say? He said, let us do what? Let us do what? Help me out. Anybody? Let us, yes? Make man. Let us make man. So the first thing that we find is the Bible teaches, not necessarily scientists, although, check, 1, 2, did that just die? Oh, okay. Not necessarily scientists, some scientists do, but the Bible tells us, it teaches us that God created life. It originated with him. We find there that it was deliberately designed. Then God said, let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air. And then it says again in verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. But we find there that it was deliberately, or not it, but life, people were deliberately designed. Genesis chapter 2. Now what happens is Genesis chapter 1, we get a basic overview. Genesis chapter 2, the writer goes back and begins to give us more detail. And what we find in Genesis chapter 2, many of you are very, very familiar with it, we find the creation of Adam, and then the creation of, what was his wife's name again? Eve. Right? We find there that God made man out of the what? What did he use to make man? Not sure? Yes. Sand. Dirt. Dust. Okay? That's why guys are so dirty. And then he made the woman using a rib. Right? Yeah. Make it to make the woman. Okay? But we find that that was all deliberate. It was not by accident. It wasn't the result of any sort of cosmic failure or accident, any sort of cosmic collision. But, thank you very much. Who needs that thing? I really should have done that. Mic drop. We find there that life was intended. It was deliberately designed. There's a plan there. Let's do this. Before the man had come into existence, let's do this thing. And then verse 27, so God created man, deliberately designed. Now, there's something else here that we need to understand, that because we were deliberately designed, because God intentionally created, because God created, he therefore has dominion over us. Let me give you an example. Art class. Are you there? Imagine yourself in art class. And yes, you're in art class, and I'm hearing moans and I'm seeing faces covered because the majority of us are not artists. Right? But somehow we ended up in art class. Okay? And we're in art class and you paint a picture or you draw a sketch or you, maybe it's pottery, whatever it is, whatever kind of artwork it is that you do. And you make it. And how many of you create a piece of art and then you immediately hate it? Okay, so some of you are feeling me. You've got to probably turn that thing into a teacher or whatever and, get a grade on it. You're very thankful to get a D+ on it. At least you didn't fail.
Go.
You have to turn it in, but you don't necessarily have to take it home to your mom or your dad, right? Because, why? Because it's yours. You can crumble it up, throw it in the trash. Where you think it belongs. I don't know if it belongs there, but you think it does. It's like, this is a piece of trash, and you throw that away. Why do you have the right to do that? You have the right to do that because you created the art. You're the artist. You can do that if you want. Okay? Well, God created human life. He thus should have dominion. By virtue of his creating people, he has ownership. Therefore, you and I do not hold our own lives or anybody else's lives. It's God who holds them. He has the right to life and to death, and that ought to be left with him. I'm pro-life because I see that life originated with God. We were deliberately designed. We'll talk some more about that design as we get further on into our study. But because of that, God has dominion. He has ownership over us. Life and death are in his hands and ought not be in man's hands. But the next thing that we find out is something, again, that's not expressly said in here, but I'll explain it to you. It'll make sense to you. Anybody ever heard of the phrase sanctity of life? Sanctity of life. Anybody? Okay, one of you has. Okay, good. So this is good. You're learning something this morning that you did not know. Sanctity of life. When you get into the area of abortion and pro-life and women's reproductive health, and sanctity of life is a phrase that you will often hear. What does that mean? We are pro-life. We believe in I say we, I mean Christians. Those who adhere to biblical standards, we believe in the sanctity of life. And here's what that means. Sanctity simply means holiness, the holiness of life. Now, why do we believe that life is holy? We believe that life is holy because God, who is holy, created it. So we believe in the sanctity of life, that life is precious and should be treated accordingly. Our lives have God-given worth. We have worth because God created us, because he designed us. So we're pro-life, first of all, because we believe that the Bible teaches that life originated with God. He's the one that created life. He deliberately designed us. Because of that, he has dominion over us. Because of that, life is it's holy, the sanctity of life. Let's move on to our second main division, which is life begins at conception. And this really is the heart of the issue. You would be hard-pressed to find someone who thinks that abortion is okay, that also thinks that that person in the womb is even a person. You see, the majority of them believe that what is in the womb is a mass of tissue, and that it's not really a person. Thus, it is not really killing, It's just removing that massive tissue from the body before it develops into a human being. You don't find abortionists saying, yeah, we want to kill babies. They don't do that. What they most often believe is that it's not really a baby. It's just a massive tissue. So what do you and I believe? I am so glad that you asked. Psalm 139, if you were in Genesis, stay in the Old Testament, but go over to Psalm 139. One of my favorite Psalms, one of my favorite passages. Psalm 139, we're going to find out that life begins at conception. There it is. Verses 13 through 16. The book of Psalms is just about in the middle of your Bible. I say just about, it is. So if you're looking for it frantically, flip to the middle, see what you're there with. Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes are some of the books that come after it. And we're looking for the 139th Psalm. 139th Psalm. And this is David writing this psalm. He's the one that authored this. He penned this. Psalm 139. Okay. Not hearing Bible pages being turned as much, so I'm going to start reading. If you're still looking for it, you keep looking for it. Psalm 139, verse 13. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Very poetic. I'll explain some of this as we get back into it. Your eyes saw my substance in verse 16, being yet unformed. And in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. What is David talking about here? Well, what we're learning from David is that life begins in conception, and you might even see some of this in here and think, you know what? Life actually began before conception. You go, how is that even possible? Well, we'll see this here in just a moment. But go to verse 13 again with me. He says, for you formed my inward parts, referencing the inside of his body, the organs that are inside of there. Your intestines. How many feet of intestines do you have? Anybody know? Anybody know how many feet of intestines you have in your body?
Ooh, like 2 feet.
You're not being graded on this. 2 feet? Okay.
2 feet.
I may be completely off here, but isn't it enough to wrap around the world? I don't remember if it's one, like 2 times. It's extremely long.
Is that correct? I don't know. It's a good question.
What is the feet of intestines?
The feet of intestines. Your intestines have feet on them, and they... How many inches of intestines do you have? Inches? Feet? It's a measurement. We use it here in the United States. Feet. We don't use the metric system. Why? We're not barbarians. Okay? How many feet? How many feet? Does anybody know? How long are your intestines? I don't even know why we're talking about this. Anyhow, David talks about his internal organs but being what? He says, you formed my inward parts. Remember, we talked about deliberately designed. He talks about his internal organs being formed by God. And then he goes on to reference the womb. Look at that in verse 13. You covered me in my mother's womb. There I am, inside. So he's picturing himself inside of his mother's body, obviously. And he sees that God was the one forming him. He says in verse 14, gets so excited about this, I will praise you. For I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. A good study of your anatomy will lead you to a place where you realize, man, this is no accident, man. Thank you, God. You ever looked at, I know that you have, you ever looked at the human eye and considered that? How the optic nerves are set up, and your retina, and the reflectors in there, and the fact that I'm looking at all of you right now, and my eyeball originally sees you upside down, but then the light helps it. All these things instantaneously happen where the image is then flipped right side up. It goes to the back of my eyeball, gets reflected back, and it sees all in an instant. It's incredible. Now, if eye were evolving over millions and millions and millions of years, what part of the eyeball, how did it evolve? What part grew first? Was it the nerves? Was it that I just, were human beings just walking around with floating retinas, in that space? Or what was it? We come to realize through the study of the human body that, man, it's intricate. It is incredible, what it can do. Some of us had COVID. And some of us that had COVID, our bodies healed themselves naturally. Incredible that your body can do that. Not everybody's bodies can do that. Some people get the flu every year. People get the flu and they die. Their bodies can't handle it. But you're young, you're tough, you're good looking, and you get the flu, you get sick, and your body heals itself. It's pretty incredible. Okay? Your body is designed by God, deliberately designed, and David knows that, and he praises God for that. Verse 15, my frame, Otsem, O-T-S-E-M, Otsem. Everybody say Otsem. Yes, there it is. Otsem, my frame. Otsem, the word frame there means bones. Got bones in your body?
Maybe. I've never seen it.
Bones. My frame, my otsem, my bones, my skeletal system, in verse 15, was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. It is always incredible to me to see brand new babies, man. Brand new babies. I've held 4 of my own in the hospital room. I was there all 4 times. So I can attest to this. They come out of the mother's body and they've got bones inside of them already. And there are veins in there. And there are organs. Everything's in there. There's a heart. And what I never had to do with all 4 of my kids, 2 months in, man, they are really growing. I think I need to go to the shop and get them a bigger skeleton. Skin's getting kind of flabby. Oh, 2 years down the road, oh man, I forgot. Their growth is stunted. I forgot to get them a new skeletal system. I better go get that. And they fit better. Okay, good. We never had to do that. Skeletal system, veins, everything that the human body needs was there. Now, it needed nutrients, obviously, to grow, but everything's there. It's incredible to think that this little baby has a skeleton inside of it, the frame, and that skeleton stretches. Wow. Or the veins stretch, or the muscles, the tendons, the skin, everything stretches. The eyeballs grow bigger. Ears never stop growing. You knew that, right? Never stop growing. So one of these days you're going to have huge ears, okay? Like your grandfather, real long, droopy ones. That's what you're going to have. But the ears, so all of that is in there. It's incredible. And David says, man, this is incredible. I'm praising you for that. And he says, my frame, my otsem, my bones, my skeletal system was not hidden from you. When he says it was not hidden from you, what he means is, he says you are intimately aware because you were the one orchestrating all of that. You made my skeletal system. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret. Now he gets poetic here. He waxes poetic. And skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. He pictures God as in secret, intimately, quietly, in some dark place, knitting him together, putting him together. He knows that it was God who designed him and who built him. But it doesn't stop there. Verse 16. David says, your eyes saw my substance. The first word was otsem, meant bones. Now we learn a new word for substance. It is the word goleth, G-O-L-E-T-H, goleth. Everybody say goleth. Goleth, he says, your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed. So the word substance or goleth means embryo or fetus. Embryo or fetus. He says, your eyes saw my embryo. You saw me as an embryo. You saw me as a fetus, being yet unformed. What is David saying there? He's saying, God, you saw me even before I was formed at all. What is he referencing? Well, he's referencing the conception. You saw me, and he's a poet, he's a warrior, he's a tough dude. He doesn't go in to talk about all the things that mom and dad did, but he's just saying, you saw me even back then when mom and dad were just hooking up. You saw me before I was a fetus or an embryo or a mass of tissue or whatever it is. What do we learn from the Bible? We learn from the Bible that life began at conception. Not 2 weeks in, not 5 weeks in, not 10 weeks in, not 3 months in. Life began at conception. That's what the Bible teaches us. So we're pro-life. Why are we pro-life? Well, we're pro-life because we believe that God designed us, man. He made us. He created us. And so life is precious because of that, the sanctity of human life. But we're also pro-life because we believe that life begins at conception. We don't want to abort anybody because at any stage of that, we believe that it is a human life. God did that. Your eyes, in verse 16, saw my substance, my goleth, my embryo or fetus, being yet unformed. And then he goes on to say, within your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. And that actually takes us into our third and final main division. Life begins at conception. We already did that. That's not right there. Life has a purpose. You see, oftentimes the argument is given that abortion can be good because the baby inside the womb, the doctor ran a test, and this baby is going to have medical, developmental issues. And so it's just best that you eliminate the baby. That way the baby doesn't have to live this hard life, always struggling, always behind, always dependent on someone else. But we believe that there is potential in every life. It's true that there's potential for great good. There is the potential for great evil. That is true. But we want to give every life an opportunity to reach his or her full potential. We want to give every human being, male or female, the opportunity to know God and to be used by God, to experience a relationship with God. We don't want to be the ones judging and saying, that's it. We're taking that chance away from you. Is that a question in the back? Yes.
What if the mother of the child has a medical condition, and if she gives birth to the child will not? Does that make
Great question. Great question. And we can talk about that after. What we believe is that every human life should get a chance to reach their full potential. Now, everybody's got different thoughts, different ideas on this. Here's where I'm at with that question, is that the baby in the womb doesn't have a chance or doesn't have a choice. And what should the mom do? I think that the mom should be willing to risk her own life in order to give new life to this baby. Okay? That answered your question? The Bible doesn't give us the what ifs, and that's where we can oftentimes get into these huge disagreements or arguments. Well, what if such and such happens, or what if this thing happens? The Bible doesn't give us that. The Bible gives us these basics that life is precious because God created it. That life ought to be preserved. That it ought to be life ought to be given and not taken away. So those are the basics. Those are our guidelines. Verse 16, life has a purpose. He says in verse 16, your eyes saw my substance. We just read that, being yet unformed. And then he says this, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. So what David is pointing out is that God had a plan for this human life. In your book, they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. This was intentional. You don't have to turn back there, but we were in Genesis chapter 1 when we started, and in verse 26 it said, "Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." We see there that from the beginning, the pattern was that this person was born, and actually, before the person was born, God had a design, and God already had a purpose for that individual. And so we want everybody to have the potential to be, to live in that way, to experience God's purpose for them. And in your book, they all were written, "The days fashioned for me." You see that fashion? They were already planned out. When as yet there were none of them. I didn't even have any days, and God already knew what was going to take place. Paul talks about this also over in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, another one of my favorites there. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10, you've probably heard it if you've been in here for more than 5 minutes. "And we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works which God prepared beforehand." But we are his workmanship. The word is poema. Everybody say poema. Poema. Poema sounds like what? Poem. Okay, that's a word that we use for poem. It can mean poem. It can mean a song. It can mean sculpture. It can mean a painting, a drawing. Any kind of masterpiece. Any kind of masterpiece would be a poema. For we are his poema, his masterpiece. Incredible that each of us in here is a masterpiece of God. Is that what you feel like? A masterpiece? A work of art? Woo! Some of you are like, of course, I'm a work of art. But that's how we're described, that we're God's, for we are his workmanship. Now, to make the point here, for we are his workmanship, we're created in Christ Jesus for what? For good works, which he prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them. In other words, God had a plan already for my life, for your life, for someone else's life. Now, there's some mystery as to, is God's plan, is he doing it, is he orchestrating, or am I living my life and all that? We're not talking about that this morning, but just the fact that God has a plan that he's prepared. And again, we believe that every life has a purpose. Every life has a purpose. You don't have to turn there. You can if you want. But in Psalm 127, you're in 139 already. You might as well. Go ahead. Go over to Psalm 127. Go back a few. 139, 138, 137, 136. Back to 127. Psalm 127. Psalm 127. Why are we pro-life? And where do we even get that from? Look at this in Psalm 127. We get another clue as to what God likes, what he finds to be precious. Verse 3. Psalm 127, verse 3. "Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward." We talked about 121 million, roughly, unplanned pregnancies throughout the world between 2015 and 2019. 63% of those ending in abortion. Now, there are all sorts of reasons why, but what we find is, generally speaking, that this baby is going to cause trouble. This baby's going to make my life hard. Maybe I'm trying to be successful. I'm trying to really make it. I'm trying to do something with my life. And now I'm going to have this baby. And man, babies are messy. They poop on themselves. And changing diapers, this is not really my thing. And, you got to feed them every once in a while. Give them water. It's like, I don't want this baby. I'd rather just get a plant.
Woo! Cactus.
And so oftentimes the baby is destroyed or eliminated out of convenience. Seen as a seen as a convenience. But look at what verse 3 says there in Psalm 127. Behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Children are a reward. You are a reward to your parents. Now, if we had your parents in here, they may think differently at the time. But don't worry. Okay?
Eventually.
The speed of sound travels slowly. You knew that, right?
No.
The speed of sound travels slowly. What your parents tell you right now, you will hear later on in your 20s. You'll come to your senses. Okay? Children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. And he says this, he describes children in this way in verse 4, like arrows in the hand of a warrior. Arrows in the hand of a warrior. So are the children of one's youth. So he describes kids, children, as being these arrows in the hand of this mighty warrior. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. Who knows what a quiver is? Anybody? What is it?
It's the pouch that holds your arrows.
Yes. You've all seen movies where, some archer is pulling arrows out, and, you've seen Legolas, or you've seen, some other movie, some other war movie, and they're pulling out these arrows from the back, and, they shoot those things off. And what he's saying is he's saying that, listen, children are like, they're valuable to the person, to the warrior that has lots of them. To have lots of kids is a blessing. Some of you have large families. It's a cool thing. Sometimes it's not, when there's only 2 bathrooms and you're really trying to get in there to get your curling iron or your flat iron, or you're really trying to get in there to go to the bathroom. I don't know, but having large families is a good thing, and the Bible, that's what the Bible teaches, that kids are a blessing. Happy is the man who has his quiver full of them. They shall not be ashamed, but shall speak with their enemies in the gate. Children will be a blessing. They are a blessing. They will be a blessing. They're a reward. And so these are the things that you and I, as Bible-believing Christians, this is what we believe. So that if someone were to ask us, hey, why are you pro-life? Well, this is why. Because it seems to me the Bible teaches that God is pro-life. Now, again, what I've given you, and I'll go back to where I started a little while ago, what I'm not giving you is, I'm not giving you fighting points here. Where you go back and you say, you know what, you're an idiot because you believe this, and you do, and I'm going to win the argument, because oftentimes winning the argument, you will lose a listener. So our goal ought not be to win arguments. Our goal ought to be to lovingly, patiently discuss things with people. And few and far between are people who have mastered that art. The majority of people, when coming to some of these hot topics, they may have a couple of points that they make, but then generally it goes very quickly to arguing, name-calling, yelling. You've all seen the videos, some abortion rights advocates at, some kind of protest outside, and, here's some, pro-life person, and they're just arguing and yelling at each other, spitting all over one another. Nobody's hearing anything, and they walk away hating each other even more. Well, what I've given you today is not the purpose of that. If you want more talking points, maybe God has stirred your heart up a little bit and you want to have a little more information. Not to go out and blast people out of the water, but to lovingly, patiently talk with them, discuss them. Maybe this is going to come up in your class. And you want to know, what should I say? What kind of points do I have? What can I say to maybe convince somebody lovingly, gently, patiently? I can give you that information. I'm not going to do it now. Not everybody's going to want it. But if you want that information, you can come up afterwards, and I can point you to some really good resources, videos, articles, things that you can use to gather some more information. And again, lovingly, gently, patiently speak with people. Let me share a couple of things with you real quick before we pray. Sorry for not putting that. There it is.